Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world, around the country, around the city, around the state, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Theresa J. Canada. And today I have a special guest. As you know, all my guests are special. We have Mr. Charles Chuck Hughes. And I'm so honored to have him on the podcast to talk about his experience, what he's done in the city of Gary, growing up in Gary, the schools he attended, and what kinds of things he's looking forward to in relating to education and other issues in the commerce, and how finance and education impacts one's ability to move forward, especially in the Midwest. So, having spoken that, I'd like to introduce my guest, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to this because clearly your interview parallels with my life, and so I can't wait to share with you. So I'm excited. And you mentioned Gary, Indiana, you mentioned Gary Roosevelt High School, those kinds of things. So let's understand that those both are interred in my bones. So I'm happy to talk about it.
Oh, well, that sounds good to me. But let me just say to the audience, I have a lot of people say, oh, you know these people. How I got to know you. I attended college with your relative. And she was like a mother figure to me, even though we weren't that much a distance in age, but still, she was like a mother figure. And basically, based upon that conversation, she mentioned, oh, well, you have to speak to my relative. I said, really? She said, yes, absolutely. She basically laid out the carpet saying, here's this person and you've got to speak to him. So I am honored to be able to have you on the podcast to talk about your life experiences and growing up in Gary, in terms of where you started and where you are now and where you're still continuing to go. So let me just tell you a little bit about our guest, Mr. Charles Chuck Hughes. He's the president, CEO of Gary, Indiana Chamber of Commerce. He was a member of the Chamber of Commerce now for over 17 years, I believe. If you correct me if I'm not right. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. He was also a former city council member at large for over 16 years. And in that capacity, he served as education chairman for the Indiana Association of Cities and Towns. On top of that, he's been a former talk show host. You just can imagine his voice on the talk show, because, back in the day, you had to certainly have a swag with being a talk show host. Maybe he'll throw some of that in this conversation too. Also, he received numerous honors in his work in the community. And he graduated, let's go back to schooling here. He graduated from the public schools of Gary, Indiana, Roosevelt High School, where he was a stellar athlete in both football and basketball. So he received his bachelor's and master's degree in public health affairs from Indiana University. And he happens to have two daughters. And that's the sort of the summary of our guest. Did I miss anything, Mr. Hughes?
I tell you what, that's enough. After I heard you, I was more impressed with myself than I've been. Well, I want you to know too that Brenda, my cousin, who connected us, she's younger than I am, but if it makes you feel any better, she thinks she's a mother figure to me as well.
Oh, wow. That's one. I think it's just part of her demeanor. I believe it's part of her demeanor. But yes, I look forward to speaking to her as well. She's going to be on the podcast as well because of her experience. But I was just so grateful to her to share you with me and the audience so that you can expound on your overall experience. I think you have a wealth of knowledge and experience in Gary. And I always say I need to have somebody from Gary, Indiana, because basically the podcast is focusing on things related to education around the issues of the North and the Midwest, because all the talk has been about the South. And I wanted to talk about people's experiences in cities and states in the North and the Midwest. So this really just has a check mark for me for the podcast. So I really thank you. So can you just start talking basically about your current role, or do you want to start from Roosevelt and go up? Which way you want to go?
I will start wherever you tell me. You tell
Okay.
me.
All right. All right. Let's start back in the schoolhouse. I want to start there. So give us experience about your experience where you grew up, what schools you attended, and your experiences in those environments.
Well, first of all, I went to Benjamin Banneker Elementary School, and we know Benjamin Banneker is the black inventor who was credited with stoplight, those kinds of things. So I guess black has always been a part of my upbringing and particularly my community. Now, after elementary school, I went to Gary Roosevelt High School, actually from the seventh grade until the 12th. And when I went to Gary Roosevelt High School, like other students who attended Gary Roosevelt, we felt as though we attended the mecca of educational learning. Gary Roosevelt High School was built in the heart of the inner city of Gary, Indiana. We are a predominantly black community, and Gary Roosevelt High School was built specifically for black students and black teachers.
Now, when was it built? Give me an idea.
Uh, I think it was 1931,
Okay.
thereabouts. I could be off a year or so or whatever the case might be. But again, the purpose was to house as many black folks as you could in a certain place so that there were areas of the city that we were not welcome. I mean, literally not welcome.
In what ways? In what ways?
Because they were predominantly white. They were outskirt white areas of the city. And we were not, first of all, we were not welcome. We were not welcomed by the residents. We were not welcomed by the police.
Okay.
And quite frankly, we almost didn't know it exists because we didn't go anyway. Now, what happened was once we got to Roosevelt High School, we were blessed with just some of my experience, blessed with some of the greatest administrators, teachers that were available. I'll tell you why. Because just as the students were required to go to the all black high school, our teachers, even those with doctor's degrees, those with master's degrees, those who were outstanding educators, the administrators, they all went to Roosevelt as well. So we had the upper echelon, we had the cream de cream. We had we're at the top. And that reflected in the kind of education that we received from the school. The other thing is the pride that was instilled in all of us. Listen, there were times when in some of my classes, the teacher clearly pointed out the name of a white school stamped in the back of our books. Sure, we had handed down books, but they also stressed to us that the history wasn't going to change. The words on the page were not going to change. The ability to learn and grasp and retain, we have that ability to do so as well. And so we turned what was perceived to be a negative into a positive. I would not trade the education I received at Gary Roosevelt High School for anything in the world. You mentioned that I was an athlete. All of my life. I was a bitty basketball All-American. Maybe I was legendary somewhat in Little League Baseball, but I played football and basketball well. Our teams were exceptional, outstanding. We were winners at every level. And the school just exuded pride at every level. Our band was out. We wanted to do the best ROTC group. Everything was built on excellence at Gary Roosevelt High School. And those are qualities that I like to think that carried me as far as where I am now and where I've been.
That's a great point. And let me just emphasize the fact that when I talk about issues in my book, I was able to have the best. When I left, the third grade was my first black teacher. And for me, that showed me and I gave me inspiration because prior to that, all my teachers were not black. And I only like kindergarten, first and second. So my third grade class teacher was the black teacher. And she instilled excellence. And this is interesting that you're talking about your experience. But then at that point, fourth grade, that's when I went to the so-called desegregated situation to a predominantly white school. And in my book, I talk about it, the experiment, because the students who were sent, and it wasn't a real true busing because we never took yellow school buses. And we were selected specifically to go to the school because not so much because they wanted to quote unquote desegregate or help with desegregation per se, but basically to fill the coffers in the seats, have people to the seats because those schools were losing enrollments. So they had to supplement certain people and they selected certain students to come into that environment. They didn't just say open the doors. Now, the year after I attended the fourth grade in that specific school, then they had students who were black coming from different neighborhoods who were actually busing yellow school buses. But the fact that you mentioned about the excellence, the teachers of their background, the Black teachers with master's degrees, doctoral degrees, okay? So they knew they wanted the best for you. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
All right. So what would you say about what happens with the desegregation that can take place, what eventually happened, where the students would go to any high school, or, do you think that made a difference in terms of Black students' feeling of being? What do you think?
Well, at Gary Roosevelt High School, unfortunately, because of decline in population and enrollment, Gary Roosevelt High School's closed. It was a Black high school up until the day it closed.
Really?
There was no desegregation. The teachers, the students,
Oh,
my entire tenure there, even beyond, I think Roosevelt closed maybe like about 20, 2020, 2018.
oh, just recently.
Recently, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
What happened was, when you talk about desegregation, integration, well, the population in our city declined because what happened was once the city started to decline relative to jobs and opportunities, those kinds of things, then
Right.
black people then took their kids to some of these suburban schools because I guess they were more concerned about education as such. And then you had to go to schools pretty much in your district. And so there was not any population. In fact, at Roosevelt, there were two housing developments, one on the west side of the city and one on the east side of the city. Large, huge housing developments. And that constituted a large part of our school population. Well, once the city started to try to remediate itself or whatever, those two developments were torn down.
Oh,
So those
that's what.
two,
Oh my gosh!
yeah,
So that means all the students who normally would have been attending Roosevelt schools or in the schools in that area, they all disappeared, huh?
well, primarily they disappeared, and the population in general, as I said before.
Yeah.
Once people started looking at trying to focus on sending their kids to receivably the best schools, those kind, and then everything changed. I talked about a Gary Roosevelt High School that was the essence of education.
Right.
I said it was the bastion of higher education. Well, if we look at our society now, it even changed then. We started getting students who had no history, no sense of Roosevelt High School coming into the area. A lot of the families who were a little bit more affluent, they moved to the suburbs.
Right.
So now there's reasons why the enrollment declined and the school closed. But I guess what I'm describing is what I endured, what I encountered, and
Right.
most people, it was the, it was the epitome of higher education.
But
And said,
so that's why I wanted to share with people, because you know the assumption is that things were better when the schools were desegregated. The whole issue, because but the thing is, from which you're sharing, this is what I understand as well. The Black school, well, the predominantly Black schools, and that I'm familiar with, they lost more than they gained. That's my opinion. Okay, what's your thoughts
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah, and there it depends. It depends. Yeah, it depends on areas because, as I mentioned, Roosevelt was all black. I mean, from the day it opened to the day it closed, all black. Everything was black. Our school colors was black and gold.
Okay.
So let's face it, we were blacker than black.
Okay.
Man,
Okay. Okay.
and so what happened was when people when enrollment changed and then people started moving out, taking kids, all white high schools that really did not even want to play us, and then we weren't welcome. Now in 2025, many of those schools, their top athletes are
Uh,
black.
yeah, because they all went to their
Every sport,
schools. Yeah.
and some of them, even the population, hasn't changed totally, but it's a preponderance of black people that attend those schools. So there's been a shift change just totally from the era in which I grew up in and Brenda grew up in. And then
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in terms of what about the role of this is the other thing I have a question about. What about the role of teachers in relationship to the parents of children? Did teachers in just go back to the elementary school level. At that time, when you were in elementary school, were parents and teachers, do they have a different relationship? Could parents, could teachers come and speak to the parents? Would the parents, would the parents be receptive to teachers? Or in fact, would teachers seen as parents for children in your school, in elementary school?
Talking about when I was in elementary school?
Yes.
Plus, well, let me tell you this. First of all, again, my elementary school was all black. Our principal was a gentleman by the name of Quentin Smith. He was an original Tuskegee Airman.
Oh,
Yes, those are the kinds of people and
yes.
graders that we had. Now, you want to talk about the student-teacher relationship?
Right.
The teacher was sovereign. The teacher was king. Listen, if I went home and said, Mom, Dad, the teacher made me write on the board, they didn't like me, first thing they would say is, what in the world did you do to have that teacher do that to you? And if I hear anything else from that teacher about you, then I'm going to go to the classroom and we're going to solve that with your behind in front of all your classmates. So what did that have to do with education? Everything.
What do you mean?
We knew to go there, to behave, learn, listen, and listen, it wasn't no middle ground. That was what it is. And the other thing is, in my family, I never missed a day of school up until 6th or 7th grade. We went to school every day. Now my sisters and brothers, if somebody had the measles or something, you didn't go to school, but
Right.
you went to school and you went to learn, you went to behave. You didn't miss school for any reason. No, heck no. Then that means you go to school and then you come home and you can't go out and play. So you were going to recover during that time that you would normally go out and play. You wasn't going to miss school. And you know what that does and what it did for me?
What?
I'm also a retired fire official. We didn't mention that.
Okay. I told you this.
34 years. I was a first responder.
34 years.
Well, I look so young. Brenda didn't say her cousin was young and good looking.
She didn't
She should have said, she should have at least said that.
Okay.
Yeah, but the entire 16 years I was a city councilman, I was also a member of the fire department. I retired as a battalion chief, but I was a public
In Gary, let's go.
Gary, Indiana. So I've touched a lot of boxes. But my point I want to make to you is, as an athlete, I never missed practices. Every job I had, I made sure I went to work. I made sure I was on time. I do that. I'm the president and CEO of my organization now, but I'm here every day, and I make sure I set an example. I'm on time. The events, the activities that I do, I don't do like folks want to characterize that we do. I don't do that time. I do like the Central Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time. I don't do that other time that folks talk about. And so,
Let me ask this question. I think from what you're saying to me, this is why I'm so grateful for you being here to talk about this, because the assumption, and I'll tell you, this is the assumption. First of all, I had an undergraduate student who was who was the head of the education club when my book first came out, and this student said to me that she didn't know schools were segregated in the North and Midwest. Basically, she couldn't believe it. And so I'm thinking, this is a young lady this was like, what, 6 years ago, give or take. And I'm thinking, you're going to be a teacher and you didn't know schools were segregated, quote unquote, in the North, and you want to be a teacher. But I thought about what you just said, the kinds of things that you experienced, the discipline that was put in place. So that made you take those same disciplinary approaches to what you did in life. Is that correct?
that is correct. And let me say something to a point that you made too. You may want to share that with that person that didn't think segregation existed in the North. The Ku Klux Klan originated in Indiana. Okay.
Okay, that's news for everybody. Thank you for sharing
It
that.
originated, and as Dr. King said, in the sweltering South of Mississippi, it originated in Indiana. That's a historical fact. And so if the Klan originated here, then clearly segregation, bigotry, prejudice, all of those things were part of what was going on here.
Right.
And that was a part of what happened at Gary Roosevelt. But that's from a historical perspective. I mean,
Right.
I'm not here to malign one race or the other because I have chamber members and I have business people. And
Of course.
the one thing that I really love about being the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce is that we're nonpartisan, we're business organization.
Yeah.
I tell
Yes.
people that we will represent you, we will enhance you, we'll support you in any endeavor that you're involved in as long as it's legal.
Okay. 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 Well, that's good. But I'm thinking about what you're sharing is the fact that the experiences you had were basically some things that you took with you and you applied it to everything in your life. So I'm thinking the disruptions about, specifically Black boys, how they're treated in public schools over the generations. And from what you're saying is that I think that it sounds like and I believe this. In the South, I have members, family members in the South, and when I was a young child, well, I guess at 6 or 7, 8 years old, school in New York City started later than schools in the South. So we would still be with relatives in the South, and they would allow us to go to the then all Black schools. And that was my first experience to go into these all Black schools, in a sense, with nothing but Black teachers. Now, like you're explaining, Gary, that was a case in North Carolina where my family members lived. And I was amazed at the discipline and the excellence. And I didn't have that in Harlem. Okay. Yes, even though I was in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and it was a political, typically Black, but it was not completely Black. But I'm just saying it was a predominantly Black school. I didn't see that same feeling of excellence from students. They didn't get that the way you described it. So do you think that it would be better? And I'm not going to say, you don't have to say that exactly. Do you think it would have been okay if students stayed in predominantly Black or all Black settings, would have had a better opportunity to excel than those who were in situations that were not all Black? What are your thoughts?
Well, here's my thought. My thought is this, that it would be the optimum situation to be in, with the exception that we were not getting the resources that the other schools would get. And so you couldn't discount that fact. Remember, I had alluded earlier that we had textbooks that the white school's name was stamped in the back of the textbook. So those are hand-me-down textbooks.
Right.
They probably got the newer version, but we've got what we needed to get to learn. And so the resources would not have been put in, let's say, well, upgrading the schools and curriculums, those kinds of things. But as far as the family kind of atmosphere, the kind of situation where we were all family, where it was like the teachers would felt as though they were teaching their children.
Right.
Being taught by peers, and I mean not peers, but by mentors and pseudo parents and those kinds of things. So from that perspective, you get the best of the best. But on the other hand, you have to look at it in totality relative to the services, and the services were provided by people who did not look like me or you.
Well, I'm just saying the resources were inequitable resources. But that's the same thing was taking place in the South. And that was really one of the things that I think the argument of the Brown versus Board of Education decision, that was part of it. It wasn't about sitting next to a student who didn't look like you. That was not
our opportunity to be and have the same opportunity to get the optimum education you could get. That's what it was all about. It wasn't about, as you say, one Black here, one white there, one Hispanic. It wasn't about that. It was about equal opportunities, like everything else has been in our country and our society, and probably exists to some extent now.
Yeah. Well, that's my concern is this: the attack on, Black boys in early, mostly in elementary school, and that still takes place because if you look at the research says that you have a significant number of Black boys, quote unquote, in special education, and therefore they don't have the same opportunity. It's like they automatically, if any kind of things disruptive, automatically they said, "Oh, special education." So I'm just saying, you didn't find much of that when you were in school, did you?
Oh no, everybody learned. I mean, everybody learned. Listen, because the standards are so high, and the other thing too is we did a thing called homework. And people and parents expected you to read and to do so. Did you have any homework today? Excuse me. Did you do your homework? I mean, that's part of it. Listen, there was a real fear in the hearts of most students that you did not want a note sent home from the teacher about anything that was negative relative to your attitude, your behavior, your learning, or whatever the case might be. I think I haven't done any kind of study on it. Somebody probably have, but I think that uh, we got caught into this situation where at one point folks thought that uh, male students had to just be athletes or whatever, and the girls
Right.
smart ones.
Right.
I think somehow that may have permeated the minds of some of our young men that they didn't have to study as much. Give me a smart girlfriend. The girls are smart. The girls
Right.
for that, whatever. And I think that that's something that we need to look at and
Yes.
and sort of do an awareness campaign to let these young men know that everybody is equipped learning, and in order to make it in this world, you have to get your own knowledge and expertise and training and whatever case it might be, because these are perilous times for young people.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, everyone. We have two parts for my next guest, Mr. Charles Hughes. We have part 1 episode and we'll have a part 2 episode. So listen carefully for this part 1, and we'll be back again for the second episode.